Hello and welcome to the special transmission on Islamabad Talks. I'm Sana Makbool and you're watching Pakistan TV. This is of course very essential to what is happening in the ways in which Pakistan of course has put forward its diplomatic measures, but also in terms of how the entire world has a close eye on what's going on in Islamabad as delegations from both Iran and the United States are in the capital to be discussing a very important conflict. This is historic in terms of Pakistan's involvement and also in terms of the ways that it's going to affect the entire international community. For a war of this global scale, we have seen the economic and political impacts, and it's got far-reaching impact in the future as well, particularly in how this is going to affect the key standing points between Iran and the US that have stood decades, and also in the ways that larger peace in the Middle East needs to be ensured. Also moving forward, there will be great discussions as to how exactly this conflict has shaped both political and economic arenas. And that, of course, depends a lot on what the outcome of this conversation is. While we have seen a representation from both the sides, this, of course, reflects the stances that both the countries are bringing to the negotiating table, and, of course, also points towards the key approaches that they are taking. However, it remains to be seen exactly what agenda items will be discussed in light of what we've seen earlier as part of the 15-point plan that US shared and a 10-point plan that Iran responded with. In between that, of course, the major aspects remain that the opening of the Strait of Hormuz is very essential to the United States, and for Iran, of course, a larger peace in the Middle East is very important. So how exactly will these two sides be able to discuss this and chalk out a way forward and hopefully reach a longer-term peace agreement remains to be seen. For more on this, we've been joined by Mubashir Zaidi, who's executive producer at TRT World Istanbul. Thank you very much, Mr. Zaidi, for joining us and being a part of today's discussion. In the ways that you've been taking a closer look at how these developments has taken place, what do you think has made this possible for Pakistan to be able to host these talks and to bring these two parties to the table, especially when so much distrust existed?
Well, I think credit goes to Pakistan. The way our diplomacy has played out at world stage has never been such activeness before I've seen ever in my life. So I'm sitting in Istanbul, who's an important world capital, and every world capital is keenly looking at what is going to be the outcome of the Islamabad talk. So, because the world peace is at stake, the world trade is at stake, so everyone is hoping that Pakistan can actually mediate successfully between US and Iran to end this war or to prolong the ceasefire so that there should be peace in the world, there should be opening of Strait of Hormuz and things like these. So for now, I think everyone is focused and praying for the success of Islamabad talks. And the way Pakistan has played out its cards by convincing US to end its strikes on Iran and convincing Iran to come to the table and laid out its demands before the US. I think it is an important moment in history. Pakistan is trying to do which the world wants it to do. So I'm looking forward to the outcome of the talks because things may not be as what they are in front of people's eyes. There has been a lot of back channel diplomacy going on. That's why Pakistan has been active for the past 2 weeks to create this moment where there could be a hope for peace and there could be end to Iran's miseries, which obviously is Pakistan's next door neighbor. So Pakistan has a lot at stake, as well as every country in the world. So that is why you've seen so much focus on Islamabad talks.
Right, and Mr. Zaidi, there's also, of course, a lot of focus on who's leading these talks and the delegation that's here. And I'll explore both the delegations one by one. When we talk about the United States, it has chosen the Vice President to lead this delegation, a choice that many are reflecting upon in terms of what his stance has been throughout the war and exactly why this particular choice. While, of course, the seniority is very important and goes to show what the United States' approach is. But at the same time, what do you think are the other factors that also are important in this particular choice?
Well, yes, composition of the delegations is very important. J.D. Vance, as we know, has been opposed to U.S. war on Iran. Uh, and because President Trump has been persuaded by Israel to strike Iran, J.D. Vance has been averse to any such attacks. And we have seen reports in the U.S. media itself that J.D. Vance had been telling both President Trump as well as strictly telling Israel to back away. But Israel saw that opportunity and prevailed upon the US president to launch the strikes. And now they were hoping that with the killing of Khamenei, they would be able to install a puppet regime in Iran, and things are going will go in their favor. That didn't happen. So now US is looking for a safe exit and an off ramp, as we all now say. So Pakistan has provided that opportunity to the US. And with JD Vance coming in, you have to see this is not just about JD Vance's opinion about this war. It is about his political future as well, because we know that this is President Trump's second tenure, and he won't be contesting again for presidency ever. So JD Vance is naturally, being the vice president, would be Republicans' candidate for the next elections, and he wants to um, strengthen his peace guy image in the world. And if he manages to prevail and convince for a longer peace in the region, I think he will establish himself as a key player in the next U.S. elections. For now, I think if you look at the Iranian delegation, they also seemed very serious. So they've got this parliament chief, the speaker, as well as Mr. Araqji, the foreign minister, plus the national security council chairman, as well as the central bank chairman. So Iranians have also come prepared. So that's why I assume that talks have gone to a stage where we will be witnessing some sort of a positive outcome, or things will not be what you can say is that things will move forward. There will not be a stalemate. Things will not stall. Although we have seen statements from Trump warning that things may, if things don't get resolved, the strikes may continue. But behind the scenes, the diplomats are agreeing that things will go forward from Islamabad talks and will lead to a longer ceasefire, if not peace between Iran and US, which would see sanctions lifted off Iran.
Absolutely. This is, of course, going to be very essential. Mr. Zedi, stay with us and I'll get back to you. We've been joined by our senior anchor, Umar Butt, who's at the Jinnah Convention Center. Over to you, Umar.
Thank you very much, Sana. And I've been seeing you interacting with so many people. And of course, it's very important for Pakistan TV, as all of us have been doing, to give the official narrative of what exactly is going on in Islamabad as we speak. A very, very important day. And we've been joined Ashraf Siddiqui Saab. He is a veteran journalist and is based in the Gulf countries, currently in Qatar, has been working in journalism since the last 5 decades or more. Ashraf Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Ashraf Saab, as a veteran journalist and somebody who understands what is going on in the world, what has been going on in the world in the last few decades, how do you see this breakthrough that has been achieved by Pakistan?
Well, it has various aspects for me. First, before I comment, I would like to comment the arrangements made by PID, and that in such a short time, attracting and bringing such a large number of international media personnel in Islamabad. I think they need a highly, appreciation. Well, secondly, I would like to say it's a great lesson for the nation of Pakistan that just short while, you can say, just before Marka-e-Haq, which has given us this today's, shown this today day, I, I will give that credit to Markai Haq, that in such a short period, the nation what has achieved, what we were not having long years. I will say that since 1989-90, that was the great achievement of Pakistan, that when they fought Pakistan war in Afghanistan, and they were able to save Pakistan and also defeat.
But Ashraf, we've come a long way through since then. You know, if you look at the situation currently, you did talk about Markai Haq, but since Markai Haq, Pakistan has only been able to strengthen its position geostrategically, geopolitically. Now, currently, uh, firstly, by convincing both Iran and the United States to come together and agree to a ceasefire, and then to come together and send their representatives for an extension of these peace talks and possible outcome of it. How do you see these efforts?
Again, I would like to give credit to Markai Haq because that gave the confidence uh, to the world and also strengthened the position of Pakistan in the world and especially in the region, which gave that opportunity today and especially the unity of our nation. And credit goes to the state institutions that with the sincerity and with the wisdom, and the way they have strategically played in the region and in the world, were able to convince that Pakistan can play some role in uniting, or at least if you see that only few days, I mean, since this talk started, that we are going to have this event in Islamabad, how much economically and if you say humanly, it was able to save the lives in Iran, if you see, and also the destruction that we were able to save in Iran also, in the region also. Yeah, so that is also one of the achievement. But secondly, again, I will repeat that this is a great example for Pakistani nation that in short time, if we are sincere to the cause, if we work unitedly, we can overcome any type of challenges in the life, and we can achieve anything in the life.
Ashraf Saab, what I'd like to understand, you're in the Gulf countries, you've been stationed in the Gulf countries since around 50 years or so, if I'm not wrong. Now, the Gulf countries have also backed Pakistan's stance as far as this whole essence of peace talks is concerned. How do you see the role of the Gulf states as well? If not directly, then indirectly, at least backing this whole peace process?
Uh, we should understand the day when Pakistan um, was able in 1989 to blast. That was the day it had given a great confidence and strength to the Gulf countries and the African countries, which we were not able to actually realize and get advantage of that at that time. But the destruction brought by Israel and its sponsor um, to the not only to the Iran, uh, because these Gulf states, if you see, these are very small states without any population. So they are helpless, the way I see. I mean, if a country like Pakistan or Turkey also, if we stand with them, we can give them a confidence, and they will certainly come back and they will stand as they are standing today with Pakistan.
All right. Last question, Ashraf Saab. I've taken a lot of your time, and of course, you standing next to us as well. Uh, in the context of these talks, how important has Pakistan's position become in the global arena of nations?
Uh, Again, I will say that there are different aspects of it. First, the participation at the level of the Vice President of
News just in, we have the Iranian delegation meet the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. This, of course, is very essential to how the talks have been unfolding. We earlier saw that the Prime Minister met with the US delegation. He's now also met with the Iranian delegation that includes the parliamentary speaker and the foreign minister who've called upon Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. This is, of course, part of the engagements of the Islamabad talks that Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has been leading from the front. He's personally met with the delegations and expressed his hope and commitment towards playing a role as a mediator, and has also expressed optimism towards achieving long-lasting peace in the region. We, of course, see that this is because of Pakistan's diplomatic engagements that these delegations are here in Islamabad for these talks. The Prime Minister, of course, is leading these initiatives, and he's held a meeting with both the Iranian and the US delegations today. The Iranian side was led by the Honorable Speaker of the Iranian Consulate Assembly, Mr. Ghalibaf, assisted by the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Mr. Arakchi. Mubashir Zaidi, who's the executive producer at TRT World, is with us. Mr. Zaidi, the ways in which we're looking at engagements by Pakistan, when we see meetings like what has been held earlier today with the Prime Minister, there is, of course, a lot of sense in terms of the personal involvement of the civil and military leadership of Pakistan. We've seen Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif leading from the front and personally engaging with these delegations. Even prior to this, we have seen that he's made a number of telephone calls. He's also made visits to different countries. He's hosted different countries in Pakistan, of course. And so in that way, a lot of this has been as a result of his participation. How do you view the kind of measures that Pakistan has taken in terms of the individual leaderships that's been involved and the actions that have resulted in true diplomacy succeeding?
Well, first of all, we need to understand how difficult that task was to bring both Iran and US to the table. It was seemed impossible in last couple of weeks by every country in the world had tried. So Pakistan pulling it off is indeed a very, very good step, a very significant step, and as the Prime Minister said, a historic step. So we need to understand that the way Pakistan's civil and military leadership joined hands and tried to persuade the warring parties to come to the table was indeed a big challenge. And frankly, I wasn't convinced that Pakistan would be eventually able to bring those warring parties to the table, because the keeping in view the enmity between the US and Iran that spans over the last 50 years. So, for a country to pulling off such a significant step by bringing them together and at a neutral venue, that is Islamabad, is indeed a big diplomatic feat, I would say, a big step. And for that, I think the Field Marshal as well as Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, they did tremendous work. The way they worked tirelessly, and we've seen this happening. They've been calling all the world capitals, taking leaders into confidence, talking to the US leadership, talking to an Iranian leadership. It was amazing. We haven't seen any such thing, as I said before, in our lifetime in Pakistan, frankly. I personally, myself, is very impressed with the work. So is the world. That is why I'm saying you've seen messages from all world leaders expressing the hope that Pakistan can pull this off. So it's not just Pakistan, which is there as a mediator. It has all the world behind it. Every important world capital is backing Islamabad to pull this off and ensure that the ceasefire that it had already pulled off, temporary ceasefire, would turn into a longer ceasefire, and eventually there won't be any war left in the Middle East. So Pakistan, we know, has been working day and night, the leadership, and by doing so, we have seen that they are making it happen. But we have to be very aware at this moment that there are spoilers in the works as well. There is Israel, which tried already tried to torpedo this effort by attacking Lebanon, and we have our neighbor India. You've seen the meltdown over there. Everyone is like, how is this happening? So we need to be very well aware of these spoilers. Hopefully, for now, no one is listening to India, but Israel can torpedo this peace effort by Pakistan. So hopefully, Pakistan can convince the US as well as Iran to come to extend the ceasefire. And we have to give credit where it is due. It's our field marshal as well as prime minister who have worked together. So this togetherness and this united effort we haven't seen for a while in Pakistan. We have seen individual flashes of brilliance, but this is a continuous effort by Pakistan at a world stage never seen before. So, as a Pakistani sitting in Istanbul, I'm very happy. You know, people are praising Pakistan everywhere. That the kind of effort that they are doing, the kind of diplomacy that they are doing. So. Uh, it gives me immense pleasure when I go out to my office and to everywhere with talk with the experts here in Turkey, in Istanbul. I meet friends, my Turkish friends, my international friends. They all are in awe of this Pakistan's effort. So we as Pakistanis should be very proud of what we have reached, but this is halfway down the road.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. There's a lot that remains to be seen in terms of what happens next. Stay with us, Mrs. Zedin. I'll get back to you. We're all, of course, very proud and we're happy that the international community recognizes these efforts. But you're right, there is a lot that still remains in terms of how now both Iran and the US are going to be talking to each other. We've been joined by Aisha Jaz Khan, who's a political analyst. Thank you, Aisha, for being part of the discussion. In the ways that we see diplomatic engagements by Pakistan, it's essential that there is trust and reliability, which is needed from both the sides. And it seems that because of Pakistan's relationship with both Iran and the US, this has been possible. Earlier, we saw the Prime Minister meet with the US delegation. He's also met with the Iranian delegation. And he's personally also expressing again his commitment as a mediator and also the hope for a broader peace agreement to be reached. In what ways do you think that will be possible given the distrust that existed between the US and Iran before, and how Pakistan's very unique geopolitical position can be leveraged for that to happen?
Yes, so I thank you. I agree with what you have said that a lot of these efforts are about building trust, and I think Pakistan has done that exceptionally well. I was overhearing your previous guest talk about the civil-military coordination in Pakistan, and that has been key to make these efforts successful until this point. And of course, we are very hopeful that we will see some kind of enduring peace come out of this momentary ceasefire. So I think one of the key things about mediation, and I've been involved in some mediation and alternative dispute resolution, is to have trust with both sides. And I know in the beginning, some people were saying, oh, Pakistan is not really mediating, it's only facilitating messages. Well, that is exactly what a mediation is. You take messages from one side to the other. I also learned that in Islamabad, the two parties will be sitting separately. That is also very key for the beginning of mediation. You make sure that the two parties agree to the terms broadly before they meet face to face, because if you do a face to face meeting just at the outset, you can end up with a confrontation, and all the efforts can go to naught. So I think Pakistan has done exceptionally well, and I really hope that this will turn into something which is more lasting, which is more enduring. And I'm sure there has been a lot of legwork at the back of this, which we have not seen in the public eye. So yes, everybody is very hopeful that Islamabad will be the place which will, inshallah, avert World War III and bring peace not only to our region but to the entire world, and restore global trade, which has been a major part of why everyone wants to finally end this war.
Right, and Aisha, that is integral to the conversation, of course. And you're right in pointing out that a mediator is no easy job, and of course, there's a lot of effort and input that is going into a lot of what is happening, even bringing the delegations to this table, and now, of course, carrying on this conversation. But when we take a closer look at the ways in which the conversation is expected to flow, there's been a lot of discussions around what really is going to be the central focus of these parties. We have the 15 points and the 10 points as perhaps some sort of a benchmark of what is going to be discussed. But how exactly do you think that the core issues at the heart of these discussions, including the opening of Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear program, and what's happening in the larger Middle East, especially what is happening by Israel in Lebanon, is going to be at the center of these discussions? And these are stances that both countries have very real clarity about and have expressed in previous rhetorics as well. So how then, when we see these talks unfold, do you think that these matters can potentially have some room for negotiations?
Yes, so always in a negotiation, there are some things which are deal breakers, which, either side will not compromise on, and there are other things that they're willing to compromise on. So I think what is very evident is when this war started, and it obviously was started by the US and Israel, their aims were very different from what they are saying today. And we heard a lot about regime change. I think they have accepted that they have not been able to manage regime change. I mean, they can make whatever excuses about, having killed a number of people at the top, but it's the same, they have not been able to bring in Reza Pahlavi as they were hoping, or change the nature of the Iranian leadership. So I think for the US now, the main issue is opening the Strait of Hormuz. That would be obviously non-negotiable. Um, President Trump is a bit unpredictable, so he sometimes changes his, stance. I was recently watching an interview, and he said he brought up the nuclear issue again. But I think the nuclear issue is something that is now gone on the back burner because the main issue is opening the Strait of Hormuz. To what extent Iran agrees on that or not, I think that could even be a work in progress. It doesn't need to be decided today in order to extend this ceasefire or make it an end to the war. From the Iranian side, I think, of course, number one, they want an end to the war. They want an end to attacks. What they don't want is what Israel has been doing in Lebanon, or what Israel has been doing in, obviously, Palestine. The Israeli policy, so to speak, of mow the lawn, where they go in every few months to attack again, regroup and attack again. Iran obviously wants an end to that. And there's been a lot of talk about who's going to guarantee that, because, of course, Israel has a mind of its own, and nobody has really been able to control it. Even the US has not been able to have it stand by what the US says, despite their very close relationship. So I think, again, Pakistan has done marvelously by including China in this, and also speaking to Russia, speaking to, I think our foreign minister and our prime minister have been exceptionally busy talking to all world leaders and foreign ministers, getting everyone on board. That is key, because I think now the world will be watching much more closely whether Israel violates the ceasefire agreements. So that is the key. That is number one for Iran. I think prior to the start of these negotiations, Iran had said, at the last minute, there was some confusion about whether they will go ahead with the talks or not. And I think two of their conditions were a ceasefire actually in effect in Lebanon, and also unfreezing Iranian assets. So I think on both of those issues, I believe there has been some agreement, and that is why these talks are moving forward. Also, for Iran, I think one of the big reasons, obviously, Iran did not start the war. This war was imposed on Iran, but Iran did fought very valiantly. And one of the strategies that Iran deployed very clearly in this conflict was to kind of attack the global economy, because Iran has actually not been part of the global economy for the last 40 years. And that's been very unfair to them. There have been sanctions imposed whereby they have not been able to freely sell their oil, which is their main export commodity. And even for countries like Pakistan, we have suffered because of not being able to buy Iranian oil, which is right next door. We had an Iran-Pakistan pipeline going, um, I think more than a decade ago. It was, a decade and a half, maybe we were ready to import oil from Iran, which would make a lot of sense for Pakistan. But due to US sanctions, we were not able to continue with that project. So for Iran, the most important thing is to become part of the global economy. And I think that's a very fair demand. So I think lifting of sanctions is also key for Iran.
Absolutely. Ms. Asha, stay with us and I'll get back to you. Mr. Zedi, this is important because the economic angle at which the entire world is very concerned is, of course, very deeply centered around U.S. interests as part of these talks. The opening of the Strait of Hormuz is the key demand, of course, that the U.S. is putting forward at this point. But in what ways do you think that this will be something that Iran is going to also take more emphasis on, especially given the fact that Iran's demands center around a lot of the other conditions that have to be met if the Strait of Hormuz is to be opened? And so this is something that Iran, of course, has leverage over. The entire international community is being affected by it. And it is, of course, in the interests of Iran's own economic future, too, to be able to navigate this with the U.S. and other countries. But at this moment, there seems to be a huge leverage that Iran has. How will the U.S. be able to put forward any aspect to which Iran can possibly consider with regards to the opening of the Strait of Hormuz? And how exactly do you think that that can be done in terms of the plan of action that is required? Earlier, we were also hearing reports of Iran considering perhaps charging a fee from the vessels. There were alternate measures even prior to the ceasefire that many other countries around the world, like the UK, had talked about and hosted meetings of multiple countries getting together to plan out a way forward. So in what ways do you think that Iran is going to approach the matter of the Strait of Hormuz? And what can the U.S. do in trying to achieve a more positive outcome on that?
Well, first of all, we need to realize that before the war happened, Strait of Hormuz was open. So now the U.S. is demanding that Strait of Hormuz be open. They should have, not launched the war on Iran because they knew uh, when they struck Iran that Iran will use Strait of Hormuz as a leverage. And why not? Any country would do that who's being attacked unjustly by an external enemy. So at this point of time, I think Iran has a leverage over things. So once they sit on the table, and I'm assuming, obviously, so are you, that Iran will uh, want to let the warring party, the other warring party, that is US, to accept its demand that it will charge a security fee from the ships that will pass through it. Although we've seen Iran allowing ships of friendly countries to pass through, and we've seen now more and more countries like European Union or even countries like South Korea approaching Iranians individually without any platform with them, whether it's ASEAN or whether it's EU. Individual countries are approaching Iran to make sure that their trade isn't interrupted and they will get uninterrupted supply of fuel by, and they are agreeing to pay Iran that fee. So I think US's leverage here is very, very thin. Iran can leverage Strait of Hormuz, and now we know that US has countless times warned Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, but it didn't because it knows that it has now the leverage. What US has done in Iran is a pure destruction without any planning. They went into the war by striking Iran on the behest of Israel, and now they are left with no options. All they have to sit on the table, and that is where we need to understand that we are obviously appreciating Pakistan's diplomatic power and Pakistan's diplomatic uh, effort this time around. But Iranians are no uh, small country. Their diplomacy has been known for hundreds of years. So is China. So I
Absolutely. This
think
is very important. You're absolutely right, Mr. Zeddy. This is, of course, essential to how the discussions are going to flow. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this transmission. Aisha, let me get back to you because this is important in terms of the history that has been there between Iran and the United States. This is, of course, not just about what's happening today, but what has been some of the core issues at the heart of this relationship. And it's also now much more about the larger Middle Eastern region and peace and stability in terms of Israel's actions. Mr. Zeddy was also pointing towards other regional players that have also emerged as key factors as to how these dynamics have changed, such as China and Russia. We've seen even previous security alliances being questioned even by the US president himself, such as NATO. And so in what ways do you think that what we have seen historically develop over time as to what has been perhaps the core focus of US in Iran, how do you think that this conflict has changed that and also the conversations of US's larger interests in foreign policy relationships with other countries?
Okay, so just picking up from where your previous guest left off, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, he's correct that before the war it was open, but I think from Iran's point of view now, they are talking. I've heard them say things like, well, the Panama Canal a fee is charged, Suez Canal, Egypt charges a fee, so Strait of Hormuz we are entitled to charge a fee. I think that will be a sticking point, though, for the other side, not just for the US, but very notably for the Gulf countries, for the GCC countries, which includes Saudi Arabia, and of course the smaller countries like UAE and Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, so on. So they will not be very willing to accept Iran because that would really affect their trade. So I think that this Strait of Hormuz is really where most of the negotiations I would suspect would be taking place. Um, Incidentally, for Pakistan, I mean, I think it goes both ways because Pakistan has a really good relationship with Saudi Arabia, as you know, and Pakistan has now an increasingly good relationship emerging with Iran as well. And that is exactly where we would like to be in terms of our foreign policy. Also, while other ports in the region were hit, I think our ports in Karachi and Gwadar were doing good business as well. So that's something to be aware of. But in terms of the larger geostrategic picture that you wanted to talk about, I think there are many things that are happening. There are many things that are changing. We are really at a historic.
Absolutely, we're seeing a very different world order. Thank you so much, Ms. Aisha Ijaz, for joining us and speaking to us with regards to how these have been affecting the larger international community. And they're not just political; they're also economic in nature, especially in the ways that a lot of the countries have reconsidered how is it that they're going to navigate their energy and power resources, how they're very closely linked to global oil supply chains, and essentially, of course, the way that conflict can damage that. For this, we've been joined by senior economist Dr. Khaqan Najib. Thank you, Dr. Khaqan, for being part of this transmission. We, of course, are looking at a huge economic crisis as a result of the conflict between Iran and the US. And essentially, the core of the talks is going to center around the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. That's very essential to how things will unfold. But in the ways that you've seen Iran act throughout this conflict, what do you think will be the likely possibilities of that happening? And also, given the kind of economic crunch that we've already faced, what is going to be the time frame that we're looking at, even if the strait opens and there is a cessation of hostilities? How much time will it take for the world to stabilize itself?
So let's take a moment and think that Pakistan, at its core, has been able to avert or prevent, greater human and economic shock by easing tensions and thus reducing the kind of energy pressures that we saw once the February 27th Middle East confrontation started happening. And this has lowered the risk of hardship for millions across many continents. If the oil had gone to $150, the Brent price, which is right now at about 95, just imagine that after 1973, this was the biggest oil shock in both in terms of supply and the price disruption that we have seen. So, we have to really think of it, even if the ceasefire is for the 2 weeks, and let's hope that better outcomes come through. The larger impact on the world, even if we were to solve this in the next coming days, and my best prayers and hope, obviously, all of the world must be thinking like that, are that Iran and US, supported by Pakistan, curated by Pakistan, facilitated by Pakistan, and supported by a number of other countries, Turkey, China, Egypt, all the others, will be able to move forward. Now, if this was to happen, so my, our baseline would be that the economic growth that we were likely to see above 3% of the world economy would probably be shaved by 0.2 to 0.5% and fall somewhere between 2.5 to 2.7%. That itself hurts in terms of prosperity for the people, in terms of jobs, movement, employment, trade, commerce. So all of that gets hurt. At some level, we have to remember that it's the collective well-being of the world that we are thinking right now. It's no particular country. 20% of the world's oil, 20% of the world's LNG went through Strait of Hormuz. So, when I think of it in a philosophical term, Sana, I think of it that we are all in it together at some level, the 8 billion people. At the same time, the real hurt also came from the fact that the inflationary impact. So, giving an example of a number from Pakistan, where we were seeing sensitive price index. So, this is the index where, Sana, you go to the market, there are 51 items and you buy them. Their price year on year was increasing 4.5% just prior to the war. The last week, which closed yesterday on Friday, the price hike is 12.5% compared to last year. Chicken, egg, tomato, because after oil, you see transport effect, the second round, and then you see the third effect in terms of the food prices. So what I'm trying to explain is that the same effect would have been felt in South Africa, in South Asia, in East Asia, in the European countries, and the folks which went to the petrol station in US, bought gas, also felt that, and also felt that at the mart. So that's the kind of ripple effect. And if we live in a world today where we have trade, commerce, all of that, the price went up. What? CIF, which means insurance and freight, all went up. This is the kind of disruption that the world was seeing. On the Strait of Hormuz, before talking to you, I was just talking to a person who has a very deep look on this, and he tells me that the tankers have started moving. He's seen a Greek tanker move out. Some other countries also. China is in the lane. So we are seeing an opening as promised by Iran, uh, with slower, but a gradual opening. The disruption that has been called.
Hakan, can you also add to what Iran, we're hearing, is considering in terms of charging fees to vessels crossing the strait?
So let's think about it, how the situation was before we went into this, right? So there were no fees. The reality was that the ships would pass, and now the talk is of a flat fee of $1 million to a $2 million per vessel, or linked to cargo, for example, a per barrel thing. And ships may need kind of a coordination to pass this. I think under the international law, the Strait of Hormuz is probably an international waterway. Ships have a right to transit passage without paying toll. The man-made canals with which people associate, like the Suez or the Panama, can legally charge fees. Toll is really like a risk premium. So think about it like a risk premium or a security premium. So maybe something like that for the time being, which is like toll plus insurance plus risk. So that's the kind of mechanism that may be thought about it. That would push the oil price higher if that was to happen, and generate revenue, a big amount of revenue for the Iranians. I think the Iranians have also said that they're happy to move on this with Oman. I think the overall package that we come through on the 10-point agenda that we are negotiating, which is the Iranian agenda that the US has accepted as a good starting point, would determine the bigger picture, which would be, the kind of flows through Hormuz and the kind of mechanisms and the kind of joint monitoring of how that happens. I think bottom line is that legally, probably this may not hold. And if Iran's sanctions are lifted, we've heard that there is a move towards that. So there will be always jugglery on what comes through if Iranian sanctions are lifted and they're able to sell oil, for example, to Pakistan. Both the countries benefit. So from a Pakistani point of view, doing all this, being an interlocutor, interests which are economic, political, social, are always there, right? So we may think of it in a larger context, that maybe something give and take would happen on the economic front. And then, if Iran is able to do more trade and commerce, lifting of the sanctions overall would play a role. So maybe then there would not be a need for the Hormuz charging of the fee. So let's think
Absolutely. You're
about
right.
it
This,
in
this
that.
points towards a lot of significance, not just for Iran, but for Pakistan too. And we hope that there is huge economic impact for everyone involved. Thank you so much, Dr. Haqqan Najib, for joining us and being a part of this discussion. There are stakes involved, of course, as how this conversation is going to unfold, both political and economic. It's very important to see, of course, how these talks are going to proceed further and how these major agenda items will be discussed. The role that Pakistan is playing is very important. It's sort of a facilitator, a mediator that has brought the ceasefire in place, that has brought the two delegations, senior leadership of the two delegations at one place. And now, of course, a lot depends on how both these parties get to go ahead with these talks and what they're going to decide. The outcome of this conversation is what everyone is hoping for in terms of lasting peace in the region. But a lot remains to be seen and depends upon how the discussion will proceed. We're going to be here to talk more about that, so stay tuned to Pakistan TV.